Welcome to the Inspirational Insights podcast. My name is Donna Jones, and today we're talking about recovering from the trauma of sudden loss of certainty, i.e. what happens when COVID comes in. A global pandemic gets your attention when life just sort of gets suspended and abruptly, like all familiar patterns are gone. On the front line, healthcare in all countries is being tested. First responders and frontline workers are taking on full risk. In the end, there's going to be there's shock and trauma to recover from. And I'm really delighted that today I have with me Terry Earthwind Nichols, who has developed a way to restore functionality and to recover. Actually, he's developed a lot of things, so we're going to try and touch on that. Terry's the founder of the Evolutionary Healer. And because he has an Aboriginal background, we get to add another rich dimension to our conversation, because that perspective has some deeper roots in working with trauma. So Terry, welcome to the program.
Thank you, Donna. I'm very pleased to be here.
What's trauma? I mean, we think we understand it because if you have a car accident, clearly there's a trauma there. But what is it in the context of the situation of losing the future and losing certainty?
Trauma can be a cut on your finger from a paper cut, or surviving an auto accident, or just being in a mental state that precludes you from thinking about the future. Can be huge and very controlling. And so looking at trauma from various ways through behavioral sciences has gained a lot of information over the centuries. What we do is different. It works quite well.
Perhaps you can just talk about what is the unique aspect of what it is you're doing when you're working with either physiological or spiritual trauma.
You know, current psychological modalities and practices come in from the prefrontal cortex at the front of the brain and moves back to known memories, and through repetitive treatments and counseling and therapy, etc., the known memory is pretty well beat down and neutralized. We use the five senses to help us with trauma. And when you're working with the senses, you're working in the back of the brain, down in the reptilian brain, near the brainstem. And so we literally come in the back door. We come in from the back way, and we do it in such a way as we have a person go to a memory. And it's not a good memory, it's not a bad memory, it's just a memory. We don't even work with the ones that are making them suffer. We don't work with those memories at all. They get neutralized later, and I'll explain why. But we go to a memory, and we have the client freeze frame the memory into a photograph. Here's key. If there's no motion in the memory, no history there or anything like that going on, there's no emotion in the memory. So the person is perfectly calm. In this case, their eyes are closed. We don't want them looking around and paying attention to a spider on the wall behind the computer screen or something like that. We want them completely calm. When they describe the memory using their five senses, they're taking an inventory of what their five senses are telling them in that memory, in that time, in that place. And we, as the practitioners, if we were sitting beside him or laying beside him, whatever the case may be, what would we be expecting to hear, taste, smell, touch, those types of things? And if there's any differences in there, we get to ask ourselves why those differences appear. Like sitting on the end of a dock on a lake and you smell popcorn. Maybe if the lake's near a carnival, but if there's not, it's a lake home out on a lake in northern Minnesota. Why is popcorn there? And so different things like that tell us different things about where we're going to go when we get through a third memory. And so when the person is completely out of emotion and fully conscious, there's no hypnosis or anything like that, no music playing, it's all calm and quiet. And when we get through with a third memory, that person has entered the back door, like I mentioned earlier, of an amnesic memory that occurred in early childhood that they had no previous recollection of, but now it is so crystal clear, it's like they're in the memory. And the person or persons that created that emotional event are there too. And so because they're out of emotion, they have no fear of those people. They just, they're, okay, who's these people? This person usually, but there can be people. Amnesia is a protection device of the brain. It protects the neural pathway that you set when you made the memory way back when, and it blocks it. Okay, so we call it the active block. Its job is not to let you back there anymore. It's nothing's broken. There's no disease or anything. That's its job, protect you. So now we've come in through the back door where the memory is not being protected, and we release all the emotion that's attached to that memory. Well, here's the key on this, Donna, is when you release the emotion of that amnesic memory, it's no longer amnesic, and it no longer drives the repetitive thoughts that you suffer from in your current life. That could be PTSD events, self-sabotage, repeating behaviors of various kinds. So later on, when you remember that memory, it has no emotional value. The highly emotional memories that kept playing in your mind over and over and over again no longer play over and over and over again, and they don't have the emotional grab that they would otherwise. It's an amazing process.
What you're saying then is it removes the triggers that are embedded physiologically and emotionally in the body or the brain, as it were. But because you're working with your senses, that's a body thing. That's a somatic, whole system thing.
Yes, and let's say a few months later, your mind is trying to reset you. Okay, it's going to let you play in this new way of being present for a while, and then it's going to say, Terry, you're not normal. You're not like you've been all your life, but that's okay. I'm going to give you a new memory to trigger on because that's what it considers normal. It's not trying to hurt you. It's just trying to get you back to what you have always vibrated at. That has been your life. And for many people, if that original event happened at 6 months or a year old, you have no clue who that person is until you meet him the first time. So a few months later, you may smell something or see something or anything like that. And all of a sudden you go into a trigger and you don't know why. Well, we teach to ask 3 questions. Which of my 5 senses just went off? Because we work with the 5 senses. Which one of them just went off? Give me a memory, brain, of something associated with that sense. And boom, you're in a new memory. Now here's the key. Show me the face of the person who's causing this stress. And you see the face and you do this neutralization and your brain goes, oh, okay, Terry, you're fine. You're out of your trigger in 3 to 5 seconds. It's amazing.
Sounds like it's something that's going to be very much needed for helping these frontline workers recover from what they've seen and experienced. And just, just how they've been supported or not. The positions that some of them have had to be put in is just absurd.
PTSD, companion fatigue, which is PTSD of the companion supporter, and suicide ideation is on the rise in this country and worldwide.
You're in the United States. Let's just be clear about that, because this program runs worldwide. So you are in the U.S.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. And I am in the U.S. And I believe that it's going to be epidemic proportions after this pandemic because of the massive stress across the board. This is not like World War II or something like that, where there's a clear victory and the guns go back in the closet. It's much more severe. It's going to be 3 different types of epidemics here in the future. And the CR process, that's what we're talking about right now, is set to play a significant role in reducing and neutralizing the effects of that.
Because essentially you can have this spread into the psyche of the country if it's not handled.
Yeah. We take that away.
And you take it away easily and at the root, because a lot of times if you try and approach these things psychologically, it's only one level. It's not covering the deeper levels at all. So
Behaviorists, they're doing their job. They're doing what they feel is right. It's not wrong.
No, it's
We just have
limited.
a different way.
It's limited. I mean, from my observation and experience, it's
Yes.
quite limited. It only gets you so far, but it won't remove those triggers. I mean, if it did, a lot of the vets that have been coming back in the U.S. at least wouldn't find themselves dealing with persistent triggers.
Correct. I agree.
So through the lens of Indigenous traditions, which I know you've got the opportunity to draw on, how is that worldview different in terms of how trauma is viewed, or in terms of how we heal? If there are any principles that we can look at that are relevant to how we work with the during COVID-19 or the post-COVID-19 situation.
Well, from a spiritual or Indigenous standpoint, the teachings are to go deep, go within, seek counsel from an elder or a group of elders, and hold various ceremonies to align the spirit with the conscious world. And, that's not heresy. I mean, there's Catholics doing these ceremonies just as well as Hindus and everybody else. So the preface is to go deep. Once you go deep and you can love yourself unconditionally in there, then what's going on in the outer world is easier to hold on to and make corrections with easier. The problem with a lot of Indigenous areas is substance abuse, Indigenous people in mainstream society trying to fit in, and the stresses that deal with that. And a lot of times they forget that, it's not a bad idea to go seek out somebody to talk to, maybe in a sweat lodge or anything like that, because it's not like woo-woo or anything like that. It is a practice of being connected to yourself and the earth and everything around you. So yoga does that, there are Christian leaders and everyone else who practice yoga and things like that, breathing techniques. Well, it's no different. It's a way of getting you back to center or deep in yourself, because if you're at that point of soul, that center part of you, everything starts to make sense. And then you can come out of it and it's much easier to deal with it.
Particularly now, if we look at the lead up to COVID, everybody's in deep ruts of routine patterns where you get up, you do certain things, you go to work, you come home, you do certain things. It's almost a hypnotic state in a certain way. And in the course of that, a lot of people lose contact with who they are. In fact, I've got the book here, Lost Connection by Johann Hari, which talks about the source of depression and anxiety as being very much a disconnection from self, from meaningful values, from meaningful work, from 9 layers of possible disconnect. So one thing that I value about this interruption and the opportunity for people to get together is that pause. That pause button sort of allows us to go, okay, rethink, who am I? And what's my place in the world, and what do I really want to be doing? And so it seems that's essentially what we look at, the value of Indigenous traditions, universal Indigenous traditions. It would be that place to recenter. Not that they have to in the very more pure sense of it, but it is now a practice that's required because there's just so much noise in the social environment.
Yes, I would agree with that.
Terry, can you tell us what your tradition is, but also how did you become an evolutionary healer? I mean, that's the brand you use. Was there an epiphany, a pivotal event? What happened?
I was raised to believe I was a 4th generation Irish American white boy until I was 46 years old. Then I found out I was Native American, and my world changed a lot. The company, Evolutionary Healer, comes from the definition of evolutionary, eve of illumination, and healer, to end the old and heal the future. And so that's what we do. We coach, we're transformation coaches and mentors for the health and wellness population mostly, although small business as a whole are seeking us out even more. We've expanded in teaching and certifying people who've been through the CR process that we've been talking about, so that they can go practice it on others. And that's on 5 continents, 13 countries now. It's available in 7 languages. So it's very expanded. The epiphany was, all my life, I felt like my life was missing something. Don't know what, and never did know what. And all of a sudden, when my brother, now deceased, called me on the phone and told me about a secret that my grandparents and my parents had, keeping the knowledge that we're Native Americans, Indians, from us until we were fully grown and could make the decision of whether or not to continue down the red road or the Indian ways or stay in white society. And that was an advantage to us because we were raised as white kids. We didn't know the difference. So there was no prejudice against us either. When I found out, the moment I found out from my brother that we were Indigenous and Chickamauga, there was this calm that came over me. Like, maybe this is what it's all about. I grew up in the Rocky Mountains, and all day long you'd find me fishing and hunting by myself in the mountains, having a ball. I could be near a black bear, wouldn't bother me, and I wouldn't bother it. There was that connection. Didn't know what it was, didn't know why. But when I found out I was Indigenous, there was just this calm. A lot of things that were troubling in my life started to make sense. And so very shortly after that, I got in touch with my tribe and was received and was given my spirit name. And my earth wind is my tribal name. The Chickamauga, it's Gado Onule, which means his breath across the earth, or earth wind. And all of this just seemed to fall into play. And Evolutionary Healer, I've been a people watcher all my life. I wrote a book on it, Profiling for Profit, What Crossed Arms Don't Tell You. Helping people with what I do with the CR process came from helping a person over Skype. I was in Minneapolis at the time, and the person was in Australia. And I got a hunch one night. We weren't getting anywhere helping each other, a traditional method of Stephen ministry, which is a crisis ministry. And I asked her to close her eyes and tell me what she smelled. About 3 to 5 hours a week over the following 2.5, 3 months, what we call repetitive behavior cellular regression was born. And my life has been way different ever since. Very focused on changing and saving lives all over the world.
So it almost feels like, and correct me if I'm wrong, but it almost feels like you had this sort of deep ancestral background that, with the awareness that this is who you are, comes forward. And with that comes a whole bank of really innate knowledge about the healing process.
Yes.
Yeah.
And it's all felt so natural.
Yeah.
So, when the door opened, when my brother said, we're Indians? Wow, yeah, all right, this is making sense. I've had the honor of working with a lot of different elders from different nations of America and getting some teachings on basic things for myself at first. And I'm a helper, as you know, so I would use those things on other people to help them. And from that, what I do now worldwide is what came of it.
Right. I know that initially when COVID hit, there was just a lot of people in shock, and there were others of us that were just going, okay, this is normal. I used to having my future yanked out in front of me. And there are other people who are trained for it. I just did an interview with Colonel John O'Grady from the U.S. military, and he talks about how they train for these moments. So for a lot of people, there was no big shock, but for others, it was a huge shock and at the level of probable trauma. Interestingly enough, I'm also hearing about ADHD kids that are just kind of feeling super calm, and yet the ones that are normally putting the pressure on the ADHD ones are not calm. They're the opposite. So there is something going on that I think is kind of interesting at the intersection of uncertainty and then losing certainty about how you work with that and how you move from those experiences into the exploration, reset, possibly reinvention. In your observation, what are the elements that come to the surface?
In the indigenous cultures, and those who believe in astronomy and those kinds of things as well, this is the age of Aquarius. Aquarius is a water. Water begets water. So there's a joining This is in indigenous cultures, this is the time of the nations of the world, the four nations, red, white, yellow, and black nations, to come back together as one people. So that you're seeing that right now. There's a lot of that. And science is pretty well kind of agreeing with this too, is this is also the time for the next level of human awareness. Okay, we don't know what that is yet. There's a lot of thoughts about it, but we don't know what it is yet. You know, it'd be very cool for you and I to talk to each other without opening our mouths. You know, that's one possibility. There's another possibility of where fear, the need for greed or recognition, will be neutralized. It just goes away. You know, if you and I don't fear each other, there's no reason for us to fight. So it's kind of interesting what's going on in society. For business, I think business as usual is gone. It's gone. There is a new shift in the way business will be conducted, from the very largest corporations right down to mom and pops. Everything has changed. It's going to be more people-centric because it's going to be more dependent on people connection than it is for the quick buck. So this is an exciting time for us, with as far as my company has a division called Consortium, where we help global Fortune 1000 executives. We have teams that go in and help, let's say, for example, a Deutsche Bank or US Bank or anything like that. It doesn't have to be financial. Look at what's changing, and when the doors open again, what's the company look like and where's it going? Changing their vision.
We, I think, at some point talked about sensing as a core skill. It's certainly one that I relate to, because it's really strong with respect to understanding the context that you're working in, regardless of the situation you're in. What's your, how do you see sensing as a skill set? Although it's more innate than anything. But how do you see that with respect to going ahead and visualizing the future?
That's an excellent question, Don. Sensing is that intuition, that gut feeling, that center that I was talking about earlier. The closer you get to center, the closer you get to your natural intuitions, that alarm that goes off, good or bad, to make a decision. And, in fact, I teach there are no good choices or no bad choices, simply choices. And you get to change your mind whenever you like, so the relevance of traditional rhetoric, or the vernacular of good versus bad and all those kinds of things, are slowly going to start to go away, because the good versus bad, or we versus they mentality worked good during the Bronze Age and warring factions, but that's not the future.
Yeah, no, exactly. Very definitely not. One of the things that I actually quite excited about, to be honest, is that the suspension of economic activities worldwide gives us a chance to redesign the entire economic system so that it no longer draws down on ecological resilience, just the planet's capacity to generate for human activity, but it employs more of human ingenuity. And so instead of just taking things out and extracting them, we've got a chance to work with the wider understanding of how things work really on the planet. And I think companies can take the lead. So I'm wondering, in terms of your experience with trauma, how can the trauma of a economic stop, or just everything crashing down, turn into creating new strategies or ways to think about the role of a company in the, as we move forward through this?
That's a really good question. We're watching photographs from space on how fast the Earth is resetting. And it's really not going to take very long for it to be really clean again. What do we do with that? What do we get to do with that? While we're in this stop phase, we get to think as human beings what we want to see happen going on in the future. I had a conversation the other day with some executives where they weren't sure if they were going to close a couple of divisions or what they were going to do with that. And I said, let me give you something to think about along that line. That's for the future now, not from the old ways. The old ways means close the division, just shut the doors, no big deal. Fire the people, we'll hire some new ones when we figure out what the new one is. Maybe instead of closing the division, you change that division to something else, keep your superstars so you don't get rid of them and have to hire new ones. Keep your superstars to start a new division, and you retool like the manufacturing industry likes to use. You retool something into a new line of work or a reposition in the Global 1000, for instance. You're a corporation in the Global 1000. J.C. Penney wants to make a move on Sears. Maybe that's good, but you don't want to close off the talent that you're going to have from both of those groups when you come together. Who can you keep? And the ones that you would normally get rid of, is there a new division or a new way to keep those people not only within the company itself, but, or in addition rather, that new division or that new line or whatever that you develop for it will keep higher employee morale, lower turnover, and what we call the EBIT line, earnings before interest and taxation, a lot nicer looking for the shareholders. So everybody's happy. You look at the concept in a different way. In manufacturing, it's real easy to close the doors and shut down. Well, maybe there's another way.
Well, and we have some examples of companies that have been doing it the other way. I've just started making a list after a conversation we had this morning. I mean, Bosch, Tesla, Medtronics, the distilleries, a bunch of the cosmetic companies in Europe have been, very quickly retooled to produce ventilators and hand sanitizer. And I mean, wonderful examples of seriously adaptive agility, which I'm delighted to see. That speaks volumes to how companies can contribute.
Exactly. And another great example is, they've found some enzymes that naturally breaks down plastic. So it can be recycled in a matter of hours, not years, right? Yeah. Into usable new products. Well, something's got to be used to put that together. So something that would have been closed down and shut down for good can be retooled now and modified into something else. There's people that are expanding in solar power into various different things. There's incredibly ingenious tiles you can put on the top of the roof of your house right now that are solar tiles, and you can't tell the difference from the street, only from above. It's pretty amazing. This stuff can happen very quickly.
Yeah, and I think this is, for me, this is where human ingenuity actually, it's been untapped for a long time because we've been in these ruts of doing the same old thing over and over again. And the argument is, well, if I don't, I won't be able to feed my family, or in other words, survival's based on doing anything, at any cost to survive. And the thing I'm trying to help people kind of work with is what if we create new things? What if instead of just saying, well, let's create different ways of doing it? So, I love what you've said there. And the other thing I'm noticing, and I'd like to know your take on this too, but I'm noticing there's more transparency than ever before. So some of the systemic underpinnings of decisions that are being made are now, you can't run from them. They're out in the open. So companies that made really horrible, bad decisions about their laying off poor employees, how they laid them off, are exposed. They're out in the open. So this is another chance for us to say, wow, let's rethink how we make decisions here, and let's rethink how we move through the world. And I'm really deeply hoping that it's a shift to a higher level of ethical standards than we've seen from business in the past. I mean, we have obviously companies that have been way out ahead in that regard, but we've also got companies that have been way, way behind. So I don't know. What do you see there?
I see incredible growth. Yes, there's going to be a reset. There's going to be a recession. It could even look like a depression at some point. What we do now will short circuit that inevitable situation. Based on the way we used to do business and think as executives in this world, there is a depression coming, most definitely. However, we change our mindset to create a new paradigm. You might have a mild recession, but the depression won't make it, because there will be a whole new line of industries and everything else that are booming out there. And face it, those of us who own businesses, that's really the thank you we're looking for, is profitable business. We at Evolutionary Healer, we're still a business. We do change people's lives every day. And there is a thank you. We get paid, okay? Because we can't do this for free. It's just not workable. You can't build a car for free. It's just not doable. But you can make a better car out of more different types of things that works better going in the future and keeps more people to work. The old way of doing business, the earth has stopped. Humans have stopped. And there is completely a new mind shift. And the ones who do not will not survive. And it's their choice. Not a good choice, not a bad choice, remember?
No, you can't judge the choice, but in the end, it all has an impact. And the question is, what do you want your impact to be?
Absolutely.
You know, what contribution do you want to make, or what, just where does that stand? Very exciting. Thank you, Terry. Let's look at the people who feel absolutely still gobsmacked by what's going on in the pandemic and their anxiety and anxious about what the future holds and what they should be doing next, given this, sort of personal disruption as well as this wider disruption. Do you have any specific tips you can give people who are still feeling uncertain about what this all means?
First off, be kind to each other. A lot of answers, a lot of solutions come to the fore when people are kind and present with their daily actions. Yes, this is a lot of anxiety for people who have always done one job and it no longer exists. Panic, absolute panic. What am I going to do? Well, you're going to go into a day-to-day mode until something changes. Nothing's easy. That's worth it. So, there's places where you see in photographs and videos every day of lines of cars outside of food shelves and things like that. Well, that's just the way day-to-day is going to be conducted until the reset begins. It's not automatic.
No, it's not, and it is up to us. I mean, we're at a point of choice around that. How we do it will determine the way in which the reset takes place.
Yeah,
I believe.
The going out and hoarding all the toilet paper and all those crazy things for a virus that attacks the lungs. People still don't get that.
Yeah, it's like what happened there. And I also learned just this morning in a conversation that the toilet paper manufacturers did not invest the extra money to allow their equipment to be retooled quickly. So if you've been making a certain kind of toilet paper and all of a sudden you don't have all the ingredients, you're stuck. You're really stuck. The flexibility wasn't built into the manufacturing design, the process, selection. So that's fascinating. In other words, you will be eating toilet paper for a while. So if you've got a lot of it, and if you don't have it, then
and that's the mentality of lack and negativity, and that's perpetuated. It's been perpetuated for centuries. This is not a new concept. Back when the Great Depression in the United States 100 years ago, the same thing happened, right? People ran on the bank, get their cash quick, and then they take off and run out on their landlords and everything else. That's just the way it is. That mentality was fed by the system. Well, the system is basically stopped right now. There's a new way of creating a system that does not allow that type of thinking and working to perpetuate.
It's not just stopped, it's exposed. And I love that, because now now it's more visible. Now we can see it and go, okay, I want to work with this differently. And I'm very excited by that. Terry, anything else you'd like to add to the conversation before we close off?
This pandemic will end. Traditional vaccines and things like that, I'm not sure going to do that much. One thing I am sure is the world's going to continue. We're going to continue. When your time is up, your time is up. It's just the way it is. It could be run over by a car or whatever. There was a 99-year-old World War II veteran who was also a POW for 3.5 years in Indonesia someplace, should have died. And he just got through fighting off coronavirus. I mean, that's a fighter, okay? All of us are able to do that. I believe when you give up inside here and here, then you give up. We just move forward. This is a good time. Yes, it's inconvenient, but this is a good time for humans as a whole and for the environment and Earth, because we're shifting away from use everything you can as quickly as you can to make the buck, to what can I use what I have to save more lives. So it's a shift. It's a big shift.
And all lives. All lives.
Yes.
I mean, we're talking wildlife as well. We're not just talking human lives, because that's the arrogance of the dominant species, is to believe that this species is the only one worth saving. When
Correct.
in reality, our presence on the earth has not been beneficial. So
no,
we got a chance to rewrite that.
Yes, we do.
Terry,
Every day.
Exactly. Terry, thank you so much for being on the program. Really appreciate it. And look forward to seeing what happens with your work going forward.
Thank you very much. This was an honor. You're a fabulous host. Thank you so much.
I'm Donna Jones. I provide personal growth for business, mentoring leaders and decision makers who are really ready to adapt their awareness and inner skill set to both meet and match the complexity and speed of change. I also bring intuitive insight into decision making and leadership expansion so that collaboration can benefit from conflicting perspectives and higher trust. By embedding a healthy balance between certainty and uncertainty, growth at a personal and organizational level has a serious chance. Contact me through LinkedIn or through www.FromInsightToAction.com. And it's Donna, Dawna.